Uh, Thank you, Major General Dr. Pavan Anand, for introducing me. Thank you, ICRA, for inviting me for the GAISA 22. Thank you, Mr. Raj Sharma ji and Wing Commander Sudhakaran, who actually introduced me to this forum just a few days back. We have spoken enough about the artificial intelligence, and in the morning when I came here and we were sitting in the hall next door, I just raised the question to myself that what is the difference between natural intelligence and artificial intelligence? And when artificial intelligence will become as good as natural intelligence, or is that not the aim? Or do we want the empowerment by the artificial intelligence to become so superior that it beats the natural intelligence and we would not know that we have got enslaved by the tiger called the artificial intelligence and the machines would dominate us. So are we ready to enslave ourselves or not is a question. And of course, many issues related to warfare are being spoken about here in this forum. As far as the warfare is concerned, I take your mind back to the 1800 AD, when the Industrial Revolution had just about started. The total global population was about 1 billion. And as the industrial revolutions, from first industrial revolution to second to third, grew, the generation of warfare also grew accordingly. The first generation of warfare, the second generation of warfare, the third generation of warfare, and today we are at Industry 4.0, where the global population is almost touching 8 billion, 8 times more since the Industrial Revolution started. And in next about 30 years, we are going to almost touch 9.7 billion, and to make it round, it'll look too big if I call it almost 10 billion, which is almost 30 years away. It means we are going to actually add in next 30 years 2 global populations worth of 1,800 in next 30 years. This is the stress on the world that we will see, that the nation states have started pushing the other nation states on the borders, and therefore the battles have been fought on the territory, the territorial battles. Over a period of time, you realize that you cannot win a territorial battle unless you have economy, unless you have money, unless you can empower your armed forces with more defense budgets and more budgets to get better technology. And after that, you realize that this cannot carry on like this till the time you have your own technology to come in to support your own economy. Ultimately, you will have your own smart systems and the militaries operating. Are we going to actually continue to fight territorial battles, or are we going to have trade battles, or are we going to have technological battles is the question. I think we have almost come to a point that we are in for fighting battles on technology. Anybody or any state which gets subservient to technology of the other state will also, over a period of time, get subservient to the militaries of the other states, and then you will lose territory and you will lose trade, and you can even be called as the supplier of the labor to the other world, which is empowered by technology. And when I talk about empowered by technology, here actually we are talking about the use of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence earlier, as philosophically we know that India has been, though a non-aligned country, but most of our technology came from the Soviet era. Did not come from the West. Where our adversaries initially, Pakistan, got the entire technology from the West. Then the Chinese, empowered by the Western world, in particular America, started stealing and started reverse engineering, and then collaborated with the Soviet and the West and produced their own technology. And on the borders were being pushed around as 3 nuclear powers, and there is a stalemate as far as the deterrence is concerned. The next deterrence will not only come from the nuclear power, but it will come from the technological power. If you have technological power, you can have better deterrence. That is a deterrence of technology. I take my mind back to 2008 when I was commanding a brigade in Uri, and a senior commander came to me and I was briefing and I was talking about the hard power, I was talking about the soft power, and I was told, have you thought of smart power? So I said, well, combination of hard, smart, but then I could not have an answer for that because 2007-8, we were not actually looking at the smart power. Because we were not empowered by the machine, actually the smartphones came immediately after that, and the data started getting into analytics, and then we find that now our lives are actually dictated by the smart power. Whether we are using it or we are being used, we have no idea. Because I think many times we are being used by the machine, and our data is going somewhere else, and our collective data of the nation is being used by somewhere else. I was attending the book launch of Shri Rajiv Malhotra the other day, and he talks about snakes in Ganga. And snakes in Ganga is precisely the data collected by the Harvard University, and he says all the data which has been collected of India is being used to actually spin theories on India. Well, I don't want to really get into that, but the point is that the whole warfare is on getting the data, using the data, empowering the machine to use the data to become smart. As far as the battlefield is concerned, we are aware that Russia and Ukraine are fighting a battle. And they started fighting a battle in an era that we started talking about non-kinetic, we started talking about non-contact, we started talking about the fourth frontier and the fifth frontier, which is the space and the cyber world. But actually what happened on ground was the superpower, one of the superpowers, as Russia that we consider, actually started using the conventional way of war fighting. So maybe in the era of smart warfare, they started going back to the analog methodology of fighting, and maybe they thought that was the best strategy to adopt. So therefore, the big question came, is conventional warfare back, or have Russians made a mistake? There is so much of information which is floating around about who is winning, who is losing, because it is not only the nation states, I think, which are fighting a war, which is a kinetic war or otherwise in the other fields of smart war. But I think it is the industrial complex, which is a military-industrial complex of both the countries, which have come together and selling their own technology and using information for convincing people that which is the side which is winning or not. On ground, there is very little that you can see unless you're being reported upon by the media through such powerful platforms that we actually see the war by how it is being fed to us. Now, is it a right or a wrong perception of war? I do not know. We all understand, and we all crystal ball gaze, and USI does a lot of programs on that. What is the actual state on ground? The second thing was that there was an initial assessment that the war is going to be over in about 5 to 6 weeks. It didn't happen. We're almost in the 7th month. What is going on in the warfare? At 75 years of our independence, we've been fighting battles. And in the Amrit Kal, how are we going to fight battles? Really speaking, we need to understand, as we speak on this platform on artificial intelligence, I think we have to prepare for two things. One is Internet of Battle Things and Internet of Military Things. The battle goes into the tactical battle area where the actual war fighting happens, and largely the Internet of Military Things empowers the military largely, including the logistics and decision-making process. And General Sharma was talking about the OODA loop, where we have to make sure that there is a centrality of information where the decision is taken. And therefore, the central command post is where the decision is going to be made. So that is where the national command post would get the situational upgrades. But the system of systems will ensure that every stage, the decision is not only made by a human being, but a lot of automation will happen in the decision making. Three things will bring to this technology, and these are three strands. One is the power. How are you going to energize your battlefields? Because everything is going to be based on electricity. You cannot run any system without electricity. How much power is to be generated in the battlefield? And it is not only the power that gets generated in the battlefield, but in the battlefield conditions where your systems are being destroyed, you still need to have redundancies. And what is the backup and assured power supply that we will give to our systems? Second thing is, what are the materials which we are using in the research, whether they are the rare earth materials or now possibly they will come from the planetary materials, because the space is making sure that a lot of landers like on Moon and Mars would pick up some materials from there which will become another way to fight a war, that anybody who has better materials will be able to make better products, and including the reactive materials. And the third thing is the electronics. Miniaturization or PCBs, which go to semiconductors, and how we can reduce the nanometers of writing a program. I think that is where we are. And I think the future lies in the quantum key distribution, where either we use fiber or we use spectrum. We have to go quantum. Second thing is we have to have our own semiconductors. We need to have our own materials or research our own materials, because our materials cannot be just dust and somewhere else is silicon and somewhere else is cobalt and somewhere else is whatever comes from. So I think we need to do a lot of research in our own indigenous materials, and we just might be able to come with the formula that we have our own power, which is of that kind. We have those materials and we have the electronics of the kind that we build semiconductors. In all that we are talking about here is that whatever analog systems we currently have, we have legacy systems, have to be smartened and made hybrid so that they can connect up. But what will happen is that if you're going to continue to import a hardware, some from the West and some from the Soviet origin and some indigenous, we will not know how to fuse them together. So I think in hybridization, we'll have to put boxes which will make the analog systems work together as one part of the system rather than many different systems which are not compatible. With the American system, of course, we have COMCASA, we've signed with them, and they've given us COMSEC. But the American system cannot be fused with the Russian or the indigenous system. How do we bring them all together unless we have our own systems? So we have our own NAVIC coming up. I think we have to do our own PNT. We need to do our own Earth observation, and we have to do our own analytics. Whatever the satellites show us have to be processed very quickly so that we can take a decision. And I think in autonomous warfighting, I think a lot of decision-making will have to be outsourced. In fact, artificial intelligence is the, you can say, the highest form of outsourcing that the world would have ever seen. But we should not outsource it so much that we become slaves of our own soldiers. We become slaves of our robots that we create who will master us. I think we just need to augment ourselves. We need to have our own slaves empowered so that we can use them in a very smart way. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.